Ladies and gentlemen, we have a very interesting session on demystifying sustainability, SDG growth and impact by Ms. Iram Mirza, founder of the Firstborn Collective and Purpose Economy, a senior creative leader with technology businesses, development and operational excellence across sectors and industries. Ms. Mirza started her career at CNN-IBN as an undercover investigative journalist. Her 21st century toolkit harnesses a mix of narratives, persuasive design, mass technologies, and power of people for large-scale transformative changes. She's the principal advisor to Ministry of Forest and Environment and the Minister in charge, Meghalaya. She currently advises governments, foundations, brands on embedding impact and innovation in their design, policy, and operational hearts. Ladies and gentlemen, here's welcoming Ms. Iram Mirza.
Thank you so much for that introduction. I'm going to start off this primer on demystifying sustainability, impact, purpose, the kind of words that we've heard so much and are so relevant in the post-pandemic world. But first up, let me tell you who I am. My name is Iram Mirza. I'm a former conflict journalist with CNN turned impact entrepreneur. I run two consulting practices, one of which is called the Firstborn Collective that looks at tourism as a sustainable livelihood option. And the other one's called a purpose economy. Now, purpose economy is a very unique action tank, demo farm to operationalize, prototype, embed what we know as purpose, impact, SDG growth, and sustainability into business model, national agenda, state programming, and development organization. I'm going to be basically sharing a presentation with all of you to start off this primer. Could you see this? Is the presentation visible on the screen? Yes, thank you so much. So I think I'm going to start with this primer, and I know all of you who are attending this session do not know any introduction to sustainability, SDG level growth, or impact or purpose, but it's critical for us to build an environment and to build a context for what we're going to speak about in the next 30 minutes. And there's nothing more relevant than the COVID's aftermath. So I'm going to start talking about this in terms of my personal takeaways from this pandemic. When you look at COVID, you actually look at a very lethal yet stunning textbook example of how does a public health emergency couples with an economic collapse and turns this collision into a threat multiplier, and which held the world hostage for about 2 years now. What COVID also did was to also shore up a lot of structural dysfunctionalities. Earlier, this used to be a part of the Sunday brunch conversations where we used to talk about purpose, impact, and this mutant of capitalism that has gone rogue. It has been able to pull the purpose, conscious capitalism, stakeholder capitalism, all those conversations from being a mere marketing strategy to the core growth strategy. In this presentation, in this half hour, I'm going to tell you why this is going to be the value driver of the future and why I believe that the time to integrate these three tenets into a corporate philosophy is over. IPCC has just released its code red for humanity, and it is time for us to reshape the markets and economies and businesses for sustainability, impact, and SDG level growth. As I said earlier, that I don't need to tell you what sustainability is and why you need it. In fact, this half hour is going to convince you that you need it very, very badly. Another silver lining in this entire proposition, especially for businesses, the startup ecosystem, the private players, investors, shareholders out there, that it is a big business, right? We're going to talk about it and touch about and revisit this later. One of the key proponent and the concept that I would be talking, rather breaking, would be this prevalent economic logic about how purpose cannot deliver profit. I find this line that you can see on the screen very, very fascinating, which kind of reveals the 20th century market logic about the food companies and the CSR logic and the philanthropy logic, and how this market logic was always short-sighted. So let's start on with this presentation. I'm going to build a little bit of the context again to say that, every few decades, you have a societal transformation where we're kind of in the middle of this transformation, where the human society rearranges its basic concept of value creation, views, social, economic, political structures. And every day when you get up in the morning, you feel that there's a surreal world that is kind of unraveling around you. At least I feel that, right? When we talk about businesses, again, a question that I often ask when I'm advising government states is that it's almost like a psychological drama of sort. What is the business government organization would look like in the future? There are lots of theories that you would have heard about. There's a Mad Max theory, which is about the climate change world, the bleak, sterile future that waits for us. There's behavioral future, which is, again, tied to the market logic and how the technology is basically using humanity's, our experience as raw material for predictable business model. And of course, there's surveillance society. And then we talk about this exponential leap in technology and resultant architecture of behavioral modification that has triggered a worldwide crisis of faith in the traditional institution, processes, and governments. I want you to hold that phrase and park it in your head. We're going to revisit it, the crisis of faith. So I have a very interesting friend of mine who is building an app in which he's chronicling and recording all the protests that are going around in the world. It's dissent, unrest. So it's like a heat map of civic unrest. And it kind of tells us the geopolitical, crisis that's unraveling in close quarters with civil societies, what you call consumers, which is the crisis of faith. Coming from a utopian sort of angle, again, taking it slightly to a Sunday brunch conversation to say that there is a lot of public discoursing that's going on about how the world is in need of a new economic approach that is not marked by vast concentration of wealth, power, and knowledge, as is the case today. There's, again, a very profound statement that I'd read somewhere about power, and I want you to park it when you think about power, which is also that how power is not just defined by centralization, but it is also defined by distribution at its fringes. And this is what we're going to discuss when we talk about the regenerative distributive dynamics in businesses. What are the forces that are driving this major societal transformation? Concept of profit and purpose are warring with each other as the prime drivers of the future economy. Transparency and trust is becoming the ultimate currency of the 21st century. The concept of value, which is the foundational unit of economics, is changing from transactional to that of contribution. Millennials, Gen Z, which is again touted to be one of the most civic generations of our time, are leading that charge. I'm sure there are enough tenets that is talking about how there's a decoupling of material value from experiences. The concept of triple bottom line, I believe this is extremely interesting for a lot of businesses and investors and shareholders out there. There is a perceptible shift in what constitutes the value creation for various businesses in the market and economy. In essence, these are some of the globalized forces that are signaling towards a shift of value creation and reconfiguration of traditional roles played by its economic actors. It could be state, market, civil society. Coming down to a point where it is time for all these sectors to renew its relationship with the society, with the people, and the planet it serves. Again, one of the pertinent questions that I ask myself every day, especially when I watch the news: what's wrong with the world, right? Do you see this picture of this, orangutan on a sliver of ice holding a toothpaste? This is a very significant picture for me because one of my favorite economists called Shoshana Zuboff, who's written a book called Surveillance Capitalism, describes the position we are in as an existential toothpaste kind of situation, where we've done stuff, but we cannot go back to where we started. So we think that we've been liberated from the tyranny and there's an opportune future that lies ahead. And yet we kind of are reverting back to what we call the pre-industrial feudalism. I know, slightly loaded set of words here. The top 5 companies in the world are bigger than any religion, nation, or any other government in the world. Average middle-class citizen who's had 90% chance of being more successful than their grandparents now has 35% chance or probability. Average pre-tax income has doubled, tripled of the elite, and 0.01% has become 7-fold. Why do we care, right? That's the next question. Now, I'm going to start with this, one of my favorite stories of Ernest Hemingway, When the Sun Rises. And for me, he was not just a literary hero, but was also a hero or guru of business logic. The story goes like this. There's a conversation that's going on between two people, and they're talking about bankruptcy. So the first person asks, how did you go bankrupt? The second one says, first solely and then suddenly. That's the kind of world and the precipice we are at, right? The status quo that we're in, and a lot of these new world disasters, catastrophes that are coming towards us is something like that. Now, I'm going to take a strain of the major set of the sustainability SDG indicators, and for a convenience, take up that topic to explain the basic concepts here. I'm going to take up climate change because it is the civilization level crisis that we'll have to face. And from that angle, I look at it as a moral and economic debt. And it is going to wipe out the competitive advantage for most businesses and corporates of the future. Again, why do you care? Let me tell you and build up a sort of not very happy, again, set of facts that we revisit, and on the field, we see it happening every day. A 2-degree warmer world. Let me remind you, the IPCC, when they have sounded the code red for humanity, that means we're well on our way for a 1.5-degree warmer world, right? So if we don't stop now, which is now, we're going to have a 2-degree warmer world. This would create a surge of about 200 million climate refugees. And by the way, to give you the statistic and to give you a sort of some kind of visual imagination, at the height of the Roman Empire, the entire world's population was 200 million. Right? Syria, which I know, and I know all of us keep talking about it because it was a poignant historical moment, accelerated the rise of populism, was actually a climate change crisis. It was triggered, the civil war and the unrest was triggered by a major drought. Again, not in the natural disaster, a very freak, never in 500 years kind of drought. We did a study, and one of the very interesting study made us come down to this conclusion that from Boko Haram to ISIS, all the radicalization is linked to crop failures, right? 23% of the world's crisis in ethnic diverse regions were correlated to weather events, right? And the economic cost of conflict to the global economy is $14 trillion per year. Now, in case if there is some new study which is talking and teaching businesses about how to operate in a conflict or a war-torn or a strife-torn economy, we don't really have a playbook for what's going to happen next. Again, I'm going to stay a little bit on the question, why do we care, right? Why do businesses have to care? Isn't it the job of the governments? Isn't it the job of the nations? Isn't it the job of the technologies, right? But why do businesses and the markets have to come in here? Now, global warming, I discuss climate and environment as an economic system with most people every day. What we don't understand that the climate change is not a region-specific problem, right? It is the system around us. It's a crop yields. It's what we breathe. It's civil wars, pandemics, domestic violence, crime waves, migration patterns, and of course the freak weather-related events that's going to wipe out our houses, the loved ones, hurricanes, heat waves, rain bombs, mega droughts, and the shape of our economic growth. Just to give you, and again, give you a visual narrative imagination of what it's going to look like in the future. The billion-dollar real estate of Miami is underwater in the next 20 years. All agro businesses will drown, will decrease in crop yields and flooding. Global output will reduce by 20%, and per capita income will reduce by 23%. Canada, Russia, now here I'm drawing a sort of a heat map of a climate catastrophe. So Canada, Russia, Greenland will perhaps get warmer. Mid-latitudes, where the bulk of economic activity is taking place, US, China lose half of their potential and output. Countries situated near the equator, Brazil to Mexico, Bangladesh, India, losses here are projected to be 100%, right? One of the very interesting study basically sums up the position of India, that India's climate burden is 4 times its climate debt. Again, I don't think I'm bringing in a lot of happy statements here, but critical to learn why businesses are speeding extinction, right? I'm going to stay a little bit on the sort of a morbid statistic because it is critical for us to understand the kind of catastrophe that's hurtling towards at an unnerving speed, right? And it's not a distant dystopia anymore. It is what's happening to us right now. 150 million people are going to die at 2% warmer world. That's as much as 25 Holocausts, the biggest humanity death toll, more than the Great Leap Forward and the toll of World War II. There is a decreasing trend of decreasing nutrients in crops like rice, which will put another 600 million at nutrition risk. Starvation events will be the new normal. 24 Indian cities, to build a narrative back home, are losing their groundwater supply in the next 2 years. So basically, what we are trying to do here when I talk to you and when I talk about the SDG level sustainability impact and reinventing your business model, it's actually our collective mea culpa of what we are seeing right now is the accelerated human activity that has caused the planet to be this way. Good news, finally, after 12 slides down, there is a huge amount of market opportunity for this, right? A lot of the people, when I go there and advise them on impact, they say there is a market trade-off. It's very, very expensive, but the markets are going to act differently. Please understand that the markets are also driven by the narratives. Narratives are the vectors of the zeitgeist and economic events of the future. So every inaction that we are going to take with no action, status quo, is going to cost upwards of $1 billion. Look at India. I mean, we've had the freak weather year. And if we were to take a collective bill of what has just happened, the devastation bill is going to be in billions of dollars. Now, the world will be $20 trillion richer at 1.5 degrees than at 2 degrees Celsius. The economics of warming, again, one of the greatest reports that I've ever read is that this report has come out in, I think, 2018 and basically sums up the economic cost, which says that every 1 degree rise reduces the GDP growth by 1%. And here we rejoice as a single-digit growth GDP in terms of our economies here. Again, these are some of the market trade-offs. ESG factors, lower cost of debt and equity, 89% companies with high ESG ratings outperform the market. Again, there's very interesting study that basically talks about that if you were to form a high sustainability company, back in 1993, when impact and sustainability was nowhere in our lexicon, if you'd done an investment of $1, it would have given you upwards of about $22 as compared to the non-sustainable company, which is $15. All in all, you have about $12 trillion of market opportunities in just 4 economic systems. We're talking food, agriculture, cities, energies, materials, health, well-being, 60% of the real economy. Some of the side benefits that come, and I know every entrepreneur who's sitting there and a shareholder, these are some of the problems that you face when you're scaling up your businesses and when you're chasing what they call is the exponential growth paradigm. The high sustainability impact also comes with these intangible value creation. Now, one of the greatest questions that I get asked is, how can I outsource this entire, it's a very overwhelming concept to actually go back at the drawing board of your business model and reconfigure everything to the new world that's unraveling. And it's unraveling at like every new day, there is a different paradigm that we do not know. And our conscious bias, our confirmation bias says, hey, there is a technology that's going to basically change all of this. So let me actually start with one of my favorite stories and tell you what the future is going to be like, right? There was a fellow called Joshua Brown, who was about 25-year-old white old male. And one day he decided to take out his car, Tesla S model, auto driven, and decided that I'm going to outsource my worries to technology and it's here to benefit me. I'll go for a little, drive along the coast listening to music, until a speeding truck came out of nowhere and trumped the tribal wisdom, which is the human wisdom, and algorithmic precision, and caused a massive crash. He was the first person to die out of this auto-driven Tesla SL model. That's the future, right? Where the unprecedented, I know the word that has been used abundantly throughout this pandemic, and uncharted territory that we're going to be sort of reigning in. Now, most of the technologies that you meet, in no way I am saying that the technology will not help. My entire narrative here is to tell you that technology is a means to an end, right? And we often think of these technologies as climate shamans who will have some arsenal up their sleeve, which will basically save the world, right? We think of the geoengineering, carbon capture plants, colonizing Mars is our way out of this. Yes, of course. It's amazing that we are landing, on the Mars and thinking of tourism in space. But to come back to our business model and say, what is the foundational principle of saving the world or stopping the climate change reality, is that for a hope of a 2-degree warming of the world, we need to build one carbon capture plant at 1.5 day every day for the next 70 years. We had 18 in 2018. By the way, right? So that's the kind of gestation period that we're looking at, right? So, well, let's park this on the side and go back to the real drawing board with the pencil and say, yeah, we'll have to go and revisit a business model and redraw it instead of relying on just technologies to save the world, right? And always parking one thought with you, when you look at your consumers, when you look at your the people, the civil society, or the other economic actors in the market, they do not buy technologies, they buy philosophies. Now, I have sort of made you feel guilty enough, and I've said that sustainability and impact and SDG level growth is absolutely critical for the future. But I've not explained how are you going to achieve, right? A lot of the people would look at the SDG level indicators and say, okay, these are certain indicators that are given to us for framework. And I find this model to be very, very helpful for a lot of entrepreneurs and investors. This is Kate Rawer, as a renegade economist. You must go and buy the book called The Donut Economics. Amsterdam has adapted it and trying to put it in the state programming. This is, for me, is a 21st century compass for guiding humanity, right? You look at the inner goal, which is a just humanity, a just place for humanity. It's the social foundation. And you look at the outer goal, where you have the ecological ceiling. So if the startups, businesses, legacy organizations look at the social innovation here, integrated in their operational model, look at these basic services, which could be accessible to all and can provide dignity and a just place for all humans, and at the outside can work at restoring the Earth's life-giving systems, that is a just model to kind of deal with. Most of the great companies stay sort of inside the donut, right? And this is something that you must revisit and look at when you're looking at operationalizing your business model. This is one of my favorite slides, where I say I've explained what sustainability, SDG impact looks like. The best way to understand is that what it does not look like in business. It's definitely not a fringe byproduct of a successful business, but it's a core corporate function of the companies in service of people, environment, and planet. It is definitely not a PR strategy. It is not a landing strip for greenwashing marketing stratagems. You have multiple, right? I was speaking to one of the legacy organizations, and they were talking about, hey, we're incorporating it in our corporate philosophies. We're doing this. We're we're kind of trying to do the net zero principles. Within this, we're losing less paper. The time for these integrating these factors is over. Now we have to go back and look at the difficult stuff, where we say that we've integrated in our business model. These are all eco-efficiencies. We often mistake them as sustainable business models. They're not. We have to look at a measurable approach towards a fair economy, right? So think of it like an economic logic and a North Star for business reinvention. Another reason for businesses to reinvent their business models is the fact that they have to stay relevant. Now, can we make profit or do business in the donut? That's a very interesting question. And I think none of this is complete without basically talking about Patagonia. And I know that you will hear this term. It's one of the most valuable companies. In 2012, they launched this product called, actually they launched this advertisement in New York Times saying that do not buy this jacket. That's the company that has rejected consumerism, understands that by making products, they're extracting some value from environment and they have to build it back. It started out as a marketing campaign, but soon it became an operational heart, right? In terms of the profit. So in the 9 months of the buy less marketing, 1/3 of the sale had increased, 158 million worth of apparel was sold. Now, Patagonia has a $20 million venture fund for environment, has created a beer which uses a grain that doesn't require pesticide. It gives credit to people who return used clothing. Also posted a call to action against Trump, saying the president stole your ad. What is it? Is it a activist company? Is it an apparel company? So that's very critical for everyone to understand, that they've integrated environment into their model, which is they're looking at the business model from the environmental perspective and doing the horizontal integration. Back home again, I have to give you this example because when we talk of Patagonia, we talk about the outside world. A small company that is working quietly in Delhi, in the suburbs of Delhi, is in stealth mode, is designing a business proposition that has impact embedded. So they used to be into these modular kitchens. And now what they've done is they've taken their value proposition and turned it into a wellness kitchens, recalibrating its model. Now imagine if it could be a biohacking spot to your well-being, right? Their value proposition is personalized nutrition, climate control cabinetry with indigenous Ayurveda-based community herbs, subscription services for organic vegetables, personalized diet plan, etc., etc. So here you have a company that has been able to basically change around its value proposition and is trailblazing in India, right? Now, coming down to the last few slides, let me tell you, how do you do that? Tactics to strategy. You have to go back in your business model and recalibrate what are your assets and look at it. Is the consumer acquisition your asset? How can you do the horizontal integration here? One of the last ingredients for when you basically talk about impact and sustainability is this: creativity, right? Look at cross-pollination, look at examples from different industries. This is your last legal means to gain an unfair advantage over others, right? This is the purpose in theory and reality. Some of the slides that will tell you the side benefits of bringing purpose, impact, sustainability. Please remember that the shift that's happening right now is a cardinal shift from what businesses make to what they can make possible. Circular return on investment is another thing that one should consider when we're looking at the sustainability model. And in the end, I'd like to sum up with, again, one gospel that I've learned the hard way in life while working on sustainability and the evolution of this is that that the businesses and the governments are now entering the age where big is not going to beat the small, but fast is going to beat the slow. We're weaponizing the climate system to go to war with us, with our constant status quo. And, there's a very critical choice that we have to make as businesses, people, governments, nations, states, that whether we want to be the rabbit or the headline. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. That was the end of my presentation.